Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Collider for another interview, and specifically for another Cobra Kai interview. And I don't need to say this anymore, but I can't get enough of this show, and I can't get enough of this cast because they are all an absolute delight, including the one and only Martin Kove. How are you doing?
I'm good, very good. Before we do anything, we have to say that John Kreese is not a villain. He's just misunderstood.
I think I have a question on this list that's going to let you extrapolate on that even more. I did want to start by going all the way back to Karate Kid, though, and, just focusing on what it took to actually make those movies. And the specific question I had for you about that is, I know that the very beginning of the second film was originally meant to be the ending of the first film. So I was curious what your reaction to hearing that change was, because both versions do kind of end with defeat for Kreese, but one could have been a much more extreme level of defeat after just one movie.
Well, we were waiting outside for about 3 hours, and I practiced with Pat Johnson, who was a stunt coordinator who used to run with Chuck Norris and sort of, he was his partner in the tournament scene in the 60s and 70s. So he was very astute as a teacher, and we worked separately. And it was my fight scene. I didn't have any fight scenes. I just had a lot of attitude throughout the whole movie. And so we practiced this fight scene, which ultimately aired as the beginning of Karate Kid 2. And we were all waiting to do it. And we were waiting 3 hours out in the parking lot in 1983. And then all of a sudden, word came down that John Avildsen and Jerry Weintraub decided it was best to end the movie in the tournament with the freeze frame of Miyagi. And I said, okay, and I was a little depressed because I really wanted to work out. I really wanted to do the fight scene. And it turned out to be it was the right decision because it was such a feel-good ending. I've seen the movie in reverse. I have seen the movie with Ralph at an autograph show from behind the screen while they're screening it to 2,000 people. And we watched the last 20 minutes in reverse behind a screen. And it was brilliant. We still got chills. It was still a great ending, So it affected me, but I was glad to be back on the team. And then, Karate Kid 3 was a different story. Karate Kid 3 was all about me and my vehicle. And then I had a TV series called Hard Time on Planet Earth, and I couldn't do it because I was not available at the same time. And they brought in a character called Terry Silver to put me on vacation to do what I was originally scripted to do and create the sting between Ralph and Sean Kanan.
I'm so tempted to jump into my season 3 questions now, but I'm going to hold back and maybe put a pin in Terry Silver for a second. Back to that fight scene, though. And actually, before you even get into the fight scene, I did want to know what it was like filming just the argument portion of that scene with Billy, because that's really the first time Johnny stands up to Kreese. So for you, just as an actor, are you kind of seeing a whole nother layer to Billy's range get added to his performance in that moment?
But John Kreese, his students can't lose. So, I watched the entire movie for body language one day in Atlanta. And I really wanted to see body language. I wanted to invest in this character that everybody celebrated because I was doing Cagney and Lacey. And to me, initially, he was just another heavy. And I was on a break from Cagney and Lacey. And, we didn't even know what to expect. No one expected this hit. Karate Kid was just the wrong title. We kept thought of it as a Bruce Lee movie. But the bottom line was I invested my time in watching body language, watching just attitude. I even turned the sound down. And it was really interesting because he never was excited about his students. He never was, happy that they won, and most of the time he was indifferent. And it all turned back to the fact that not everything was the way it was supposed to be. No mercy means what he learned and later on, which you'll learn in future episodes. But no mercy comes from a very specific place. And honestly, Billy didn't have a chance at that point, and neither did any of them, because he talks to them and he says, step back. He's at the height of his emotionality there because he lost. And because he lost to a man who he loathes, who was teaching the opposite of Cobra Kai, Miyagi-Do, be sweet. And, it's the right way to teach karate, because Miyagi taught, what was it? He taught it as a defensive art, while John Kreese taught karate as a offensive sport. And that was the difference. And, spiritually, they were just at odds all the time. So I don't think Billy or the rest of the Cobra Kai could have stood up to Kreese at that point. It was the height of intensity of a man losing who hasn't lost probably since he was in Vietnam.
And then moving into the fight portion of that, and specifically, when he finally has his fists go through the window and gets blood on his hands, I'll never forget the look on your face. And now that I've seen, future movies and Cobra Kai, I have a feeling I know where that fear on his face comes from. But in that moment while you're shooting it, what's kind of going through your head as Kreese?
Very interesting story. We rehearsed that several times, and the window never broke. The special effects man could never get the charge in the base of the window for the window to shatter. And I was supposed to be about this far from the window, and it shatters. And it never did. So he promised me it would work on this take. Rehearsal. Still couldn't. I'd smack up against it. And it was a lunge punch. So a lot of force behind it. And just never, the window never broke. They promised me it would break. So I backed up and I said, I'll just punch this instead of lunging and punching. Sure enough, it didn't break. I broke it. Right through shards of glass, shards sticking out of my thing. Going in was real. And what you saw coming out was, that look on the face that was the next day we shot that. And coming out, we shot the next day. And all the accumulation of him losing and me almost losing my entire hand, it was an accumulation of emotions that contributed to the fear, because I don't think you ever see John Kreese fearful. And you don't see him fearful in the series either. And there's a level of emotional misunderstanding there that he's at a loss with himself. It's like, when someone knows they've made a mistake, or someone knows they're entertaining uncharted ground emotionally, strange things happen. And it could have been a little cartoonish, I think, but John wanted it big, that fear to be big. Avildsen, and I think I would have played a little more neutral, but bottom line was, you listen to him, because he didn't give a lot of direction, because he also, as a director, believes that if I'm giving you the job, and he used to verbalize this, if I'm giving you the job, you know what you're doing. I don't have to tell you, So being all that said, that's what came out of that, honking of my nose,
I also did wonder if the fear on his face maybe kind of tapped into his experience fighting in the army too. And maybe just, I don't know, the trauma that could follow you from something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the last time John Kreese was afraid was back there. So, anything is possible. It's like having a relationship. You have a relationship with a woman, and then something comes up for you from 10 years ago, some affair you had and you didn't know she knew about it. And then all of a sudden you've had a great relationship for 10 years and something dark comes up. You don't really know how to react, because you're lost. It was not something you anticipated in the communication of this relationship. So it's kind of the unknown. It's really, John Kreese is not comfortable with anything other than being triumphant. And as students, we don't lose in Cobra Kai. It's just not an option. Mercy is for the weak. Here and on the street, someone confronts you, he's the enemy. An enemy deserves no mercy. And that's it, But Robert Kamen, to really give you a little capsule version, without Robert Kamen and without these writers of the show, this success doesn't exist. Kamen truly wrote wax on, wax off, no mercy, sweep the leg. We're still saying these lines 35 years later. And, what are we saying? The force be with you. We can compare it to Play It Against Sam. We can compare it to, frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn, from Gone with the Wind. But That's how good the writing is. We're still saying these lines 35 years later.
And it's not going to stop now.
I hope not.
Never.
I hope. I am a big proponent of the Western, and I really hope that somewhere along the line we can get a Western, which I think is the heritage of American cinema. And I think that one day I'd love to be able to have a success like Cobra Kai, but in that genre. And it's going to take a lot of playing, because from 1967 to 1920 to 1967, one of every movie that came out of Hollywood was a Western. So it's tricky. It's really tricky, but we'll see.
We're going to get there. I believe it. I have a very specific karate-related question for you. So in Karate Kid and also in Cobra Kai, we hear different variations of the Kia often. Like there's a lot of ites, and also at the very, very end of season 2 of Cobra Kai, there's a very intense, I think it's haiku. And I do wonder, do the writers talk to you about which version they want to use at which point and for what purpose?
You take a lot from the stunt coordinators, who are brilliant. The stunt coordinators are brilliant. But I use the ki from Pat Johnson, the ites. That was his ki. His deal was putting your hands in the belt. His deal was occasionally like this, and his body language was very important, and his attitude was very important. Sweetest man in the world, Pat Johnson, but a complete killer. I mean, just brilliant. He was so brilliant with karate. And the ki, I always insist on using ites, but other people just do a ki with a breath, and whatever comes out, comes out. Everybody's different. But in the dojo, I use ites, and when I'm teaching the class, they pretty much say ites, but it's in their own style. So it's just an exhale, of course, number one, to frighten your opponent, but number two, to get as much strength as you can on your forward thrust or your kick or whatever you're doing in forward motion,
Absolutely. It definitely makes a big impression. That's another thing that I find people repeating very often now. So jumping into some specific season 2 scenes here, I wonder what it's like just for you, like not even Kreese, but you, Martin Kove, doing the scenes with Johnny where, Kreese and Johnny are either working together, or even in the scene in the shelter where Kreese is opening up to him. We know the path that Kreese is on, but is there any part of you that kind of still aches for him to become a better person and to continue this journey with Johnny?
I ask the writers all the time to write him with a vulnerability. And that scene in the shelter, I mean, I cried supermarket openings, so I really like those moments a lot. And they like the dark side, I like to mix it up. But that scene in the shelter, the scene where I give him his trophy at the end, and I think it's Hayden who wrote this narration. At the end of episode 10, when I'm leaving, and Billy calls me back and says, "Hold on." And the narration on the page said, John Kreese smiles. Is it a smile of being happy and comfortable to be back at Johnny's side? Or is it the smile of a master manipulator? That's the stage direction on the bottom of the page. And then when the script was over. So I think I did it 10 times with everything I could imagine. Some of it was that vulnerable guy who's really happy to be there. Some of it was a manipulation. But I think that John Kreese loves Johnny Lawrence so much. It's his son. The only thing that he can cotton to more than his son is, for as much affection as he's capable of conjuring up, is Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai, you violate Cobra Kai, there's nothing left. There's no relationship. He loves Billy so much, but yet Billy violated Cobra Kai, and it's Cobra Kai's primary. So that's, the vulnerability comes from, I believe, really being able to focus in on what he loves and having a heartbreak that he has to do what he has to do, because he believes that Johnny will thank him one day for setting him straight that Cobra Kai is the way to go, not anything any more lenient.
So, given the fact that he looks at Johnny like a son, at this point, Johnny's pushed him away quite a few times. Do you think Kreese is in a position now where he's looking at Johnny as an enemy, or is that father-son vibe still there, and could he try to pull him back in?
I think the father-son vibe, doesn't change. I mean, how many stories have we heard of criminals that do terrible things, but their parents are still in the courtroom? The parents are still there to support, even though the child is somewhat lost and he's a criminal. I think Johnny will always be my second love, and there's a lot of support for a second love, integrity and compliance with karate is number one, the integrity of Cobra Kai, and then comes, I have to help Johnny as often as I can. Even though he rejects me, he just doesn't know, from John Kreese's point of view, he doesn't know what's the best for him, and that'll last. I think if the show went 5 or 6 seasons, I don't think that will ever change for my character. It's like, will you ever change for the love of your son or your child or your baby? It just, life will change, circumstances will change, but in here, pretty much, you have to be violated big time for that to change.
So do you think Kreese is redeemable at a point?
Absolutely.
Okay. I had a feeling.
But it depends. You got to remember that it depends on what really, from his point of view, why should he be redeemed? He is he's going down the highway in the right wagon. He's traveling down on the best horse in the race, and he doesn't feel it's even necessary. But to answer your question, if things became intolerable, I think the character is very redeemable because I enjoy playing those moments of redemption.
You're good at it too.
Thank you.
So you said it's Cobra Kai, then it's Johnny. I wonder if there's room in Kreese's life for a third love in that tier, and if maybe Hawk might fill that position in season 3.
It's a possibility. The writers, I love Hawk. Hawk is Johnny Lawrence, 20, 30 years ago. And I like his passion, I would love to see the third entity, because it would be total surprise. The third entity, a woman. What kind of woman would tolerate a man like John Kreese? And that character alone would be fascinating to have in a story that we keep bringing in all kinds of elements that nobody expects,
You're suggesting things, and it's making my head swirl with ideas, because now I'm pushing Hawk out and I'm moving Tori into that position, and that could be a nice challenge for maybe Eli to reemerge.
Sure. Well, God, you have a very good imagination. God, that's going out there. That's out there. I had Tori's terrific, and it's really great to play as an actor, opening up things that you yourself highly identify with. It's not a stretch because I'm not John Kreese, but John Kreese comes into my life much more often than you think on a daily basis. It just comes up because he's a celebrated character that somehow in the back of your mind, you don't shut them off. Daniel Day-Lewis keeps his character for 6 months. They just are. And when they're well written, they are highly identifiable within your personal life.
It is true. As a kid growing up doing karate, I guarantee you, if Cobra Kai existed when I was doing that, I definitely would have gravitated towards a character like Tori. She's a kick-ass, strong leading lady, and I would have been totally rooting for her nonstop.
Yeah. But there's that level of, I've always felt, being a part of Cagney and Lacey for 6 years, and they would always get these great cases, and I would get missing persons in public latrines. That's what I would. Victor Isbecki always felt, as well as Martin Kove, that a woman could do anything a man could do. I've always felt that way. And yet the character, of course, never did. The character was a chauvinist. But I was, doing a TV series for 6 years, always feeling that way because it was so well written what they did and what they covered as police women. And the show was ahead of its time because no one was ready for two female policewomen in 1984. But you know, there's no line in the sand. If there's no, you know, you're on this side, that side. It's all merged now. It's not like the Alamo where there's a line. I'm going to stay and you're going to go. You know, it's all pretty much shared in society. All of us. You know, we all have the same purpose: is to be happy and comfortable, and as an artist, to be real with your moment. That's all.
Absolutely, for the better there. So I know you probably can't tell me too much about season 3, but I did want to know maybe about the evolution of Kreese's fighting style and the pillars of his technique. Are we going to see everything that we knew about Cobra Kai kind of get taken to another level after, you know, again, Johnny turns his back on him a second time around?
Well, you're going to see a lot of leadership. You're going to see, and you will see, unquestionably, there will be a lot of, I can't expound on how much action, but there's a terrific, you know, amount of that. And you'll see the prowess. You know, I can't really say very much, but it's quite exciting. And it's very surprising. All the elements, very surprising. And you'll be very happy because it goes further into the story of the characters you love. And these characters, whether they're myself, who's reasonably disreputable and misunderstood, or it's Johnny Lawrence, who's the misfit, or it's Ralph, who's the stationary, decent soul of all of us, in essence. You'll see the characters do surprising things that are just, you know, wonderful to hold on to. Just like season 1 and 2, we hold on to these characters because they created so well. And our writers, you know, Hayden Schlossberg and Josh Heald and John Hurwitz, they really know what they're doing, and they are big fans of the show. It's not like working for someone on another agenda who's been in the business 40 years and sits around, smokes a cigar, and, you know, just got his favorites. They really developed these characters from the past, from the movies. They went in there and took cuts. In what you saw in season 1 and 2, they took unused angles from the archives of things that were not used in the movie, certain cuts that John Avildsen didn't use, and they would go in and select them and use them in different flashbacks that you saw in the show. And it's brilliant. Just wonderful. That's how much they care.
No, it's true. You can feel it while you're watching it too. So I'm going to go back to something you already brought up. I have a feeling you might not be able to answer this, but I'm going to go for it. How, at the very end, Kreese has Cobra Kai. How exactly is he paying for it? And could that maybe bring back a certain source of financing into the equation?
Well, I know what you're hinting to, and but we can't even go there. But the thing is, but I mean, I know exactly where you're going. But the thing is that John Kreese, because I brought that question up, can he afford all this? The bottom line is he's making money from the students there. He's very popular at the end. You know, now the students, based on that fight, you know, in school, that now they want to be on, as everybody does, wants to be on the side, the winners. And Cobra Kai will increase in the amount of students, will increase in the amount of revenue, and being a badass, because Cobra Kai, and Billy says it too, he says, you know, Cobra Kai is badass. It really is. And it doesn't mean you have to go as far as John Kreese goes, from Billy's standpoint today in season 2. But John doesn't feel that way, you know, Sensei Kreese doesn't feel that way. He doesn't feel there's a margin of evil. He doesn't feel that way. It's an instructional procedure to succeed in Cobra Kai, and you will get it if you join. You come in on time, you profess no mercy, you profess mercy is for the weak, and fear does not exist in the dojo. Fear, you know, defeat does not exist in the dojo. As long as you stay on that, he'll always have students, he'll always have an income, he'll always keep Cobra Kai open, and if he doesn't, he'll do what he did with the landlord before, you know, and he is a conspirator, but he really feels it's different if you're a conspirator with a negative approach or you're a conspirator to make the world a little better. John Kreese thinks by his conspiracy, him putting his puzzle together in his own way, he's making the world a better place.
I'll take that tease. You took a potentially huge spoiler question and you turned it into something that was just a good tease to make me even more excited for what's to come.
It's a good question because I know where you're going, but it's like, you can't because and to be perfectly honest, I don't even know the answer to that question totally. So we'll keep it, the undercurrent of the interview, I really don't even know the answer.
It almost makes me happier you don't know the answer because I feel like that's a good sign that there's like so much more room to explore as the show goes on and on. Because I've been looking at the comments and interviews that we've been doing, and one of the big ones is that I'm so glad season 3 is coming to Netflix, but make sure like you do more and more. Like we haven't even seen season 3 yet, and people are already freaking out that's like it's not going to go on after that. Like it's going to be the biggest thing ever.
Netflix, it's really just a terrific organization. I mean, I've been doing publicity for them, and they just have a really good feeling about this because they're so inspired. They're inspired, and it's great to work with someone like that. It's just wonderful. Most of the time you do a television show, and I've done 4-5 series, the network gets behind the show. And that's it. You have to hire a publicist to help your career go along with paralleling. Netflix really oversees even we actors to make sure that we're doing the right shows, that we're coming on your show, we've got the right things to say, and it's great to see that. And, it's kind of interesting, it's the right time. COVID-19 has been so limiting. I lost 3 movies that got postponed, and one was a Western, but, there's a silver lining to some of this. The silver lining is I spend more time with the family. I can cultivate my relationship more. And you can plan more and look at the world, and you're a little slower because you're home. You're not preoccupied with our lives, per se. And as an actor, you really can focus in on what you and I are doing, the different alternatives of what makes a character more successful or less,
Yeah, I'm always grasping for silver linings right now. And a big one has definitely been being able to revisit Cobra Kai on Netflix. I mean, I'm not just saying it because I'm talking to you. Truly, that has just like brightened my days the last couple of days, being able to watch it over and over, and now being able to take it and share it with my little cousins and my family who have yet to see it. So I am very happy to see the Cobra Kai community grow, and I'm rooting for you guys in season 3. Martin, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
You're very gracious. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Next time we'll talk about a Western that I've got in development. Then we can talk about the Wild Bunch, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, all that stuff.
Yes, please.
It'll be fun combined with Cobra Kai,
I wouldn't mind taking that. We don't talk about that stuff nearly enough.
Yeah, it's a heritage of our whole world of cinema, and we should talk about it more often. Anyway, take care of yourself.